This is the, for those joining, this is the Affordable Housing Committee meeting of Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. We're meeting in the Old Town Hall Conference Room, as well as via Zoom. The time now is 7:07 p.m. We do have a quorum. I'll turn things over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. It was great to see everyone. First item will be the minutes of the September 11 meeting. Did everybody get a copy of the minutes?
Thank you, Gretchen. I move to approve.
There's only one slight typo.
That's probably my fault.
Under new business, we refer to the hosting fund. The hosting trust fund.
I gotta change that one. Sorry. Boy, I missed that one.
Alright. Move to approve with one additional.
My bad.
One question for Mark.
That's my
question. There's some language on the second page of the minutes where, however, he suggested language to read for the lack of the development, et cetera, was not part of the proposal. I'm not sure what you mean, but it wasn't part of.
Right.
It's not currently part of the amendment, proposed text amendment.
Oh, okay, so the language is not included in the text.
They didn't follow through. They didn't follow through.
Okay, fine, okay.
Any comments on we have a motion and second, everybody? Good? Okay, great. Okay, so next item we have a usual discussion of the affordable housing plan.
Consolidated.
Yeah, so well, I think probably most of what we'll talk about tonight will be within the context of the POCD, but Mark, anything else that you wanted to, do you have anything here on
I know.
inclusionary zoning, for instance?
We're continuing to reach out to communities to get the latest and greatest information with respect to inclusionary zoning. I know Tom Ivers in my office had a conversation yesterday with Emily Gordon, who does this work on behalf of the city of Stamford, and provided some updated. They've since updated their regulations since once we first started doing our analysis. So he has that information as well as a better understanding of how it actually works in Stamford. So we'll hopefully have that completed by next month's meeting so that we can take action, assuming that the Planning and Zoning Commission is moving ahead with the POCD.
Okay, great. So I don't know if there's anything else that we need to address before we jump into the discussion of POCD.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much.
Is everything? All right, so then I guess we can move into old business. And should we take the POCD item first, since that's probably our most time-consuming and substantive item? That's nice. So why don't we do that? So.
Did everybody get this?
I can hand out copies of what Herb resurfaced last time, which was some ideas generated. I think Bob also has put together some thoughts and did a very thorough analysis of the POCD draft as compared to our affordable housing plan recommendation, comparing and contrasting different housing related items or strategies or policies within each. I don't know if you want me to make copies of that.
I didn't bring copies, but if you want.
I also have copies of this, which is my
More
rudimentary analysis.
we did that last time, but let's assume that people didn't bring it with them. So
I think the one thing I want to probably start with here is that I think all of you know the Planning and Zoning Commission is planning to conduct a public hearing next Tuesday at the Fire Training Center. It is part of it's a requirement before adopting a plan of conservation development. They've done quite a bit of work, as we know. They've spent several years, actually started this process before the COVID pandemic. Got kind of sideways on that, then brought in a consultant to help staff finish the plan, and they've been at it for a number of years now. So a lot of workshops, give and take from the commission. So there's been a lot of work done on it. It's not perfect, but nothing ever is. But I do think that, my review, and I think Bob, you concur, that they've done a pretty diligent job of adopting most of our policy recommendations in the Affordable Housing Plan. They're pretty faithful to that. And so it's a decent plan. It's a step in the right. I'm sure there are folks here that would like it to go perhaps further in some areas. But it is a good step forward. So that's my quick and dirty analysis.
I think just to add to that, I would comment that between this draft and the prior draft, there really weren't any major revisions to the housing piece of it. They made more edits to other sections that don't relate directly to affordable housing. So I think they really did do a really thorough. They were very aware of our affordable housing plan and our major recommendations. All of our major recommendations are in there. They were in there from the get-go. And the commission, from what I could see watching the videos of all the discussions, they didn't push back on anything that from our plan found its way into the POCD relative to housing. So I'm encouraged by that. And there are other sections that have been firmed up and edited more since the prior draft. And I think there are some on the commission who'd like further analysis, research, study, take more time to look into some things. But I think what they have now is really good. And of course, the staff is working, I guess, it's not a fine line, but they don't want to be too detailed. And they want to couch, I think, most of the recommendations in terms of, let's consider doing some research. Let's consider this and that. And I think that's at the commission's direction, from what I could gather. And that probably makes sense. It probably should be less specific and a little more general and overarching. And I think to the extent that it addresses affordable housing, they've hit all the notes. We could quibble, could they add another line or two about this or that, but then you're getting into the weeds of it. And I think the staff may feel that the commission will want to go that far. They want to leave it a little bit more vague, just to leave themselves some room, which is fine, because then obviously from this stems, more work where the planning staff will roll up their sleeves and go to town on our zoning regs and do a wholesale up and down rewrite of the law, of the regs, which is sorely needed and has been lacking for so long. So I think we should encourage them to continue at pace and take the public input, but then move on, vote on it, and approve it. That'll be somewhat deterred probably by the election, by the members of the commission, and it'll forestall this a little bit more. But it shouldn't take another 2 years to put this thing to bed. I don't think.
Oh my God. I think this is the American one for the first sessions with the public were before the pandemic.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Were before the pandemic.
That's
And
right.
for almost 2 years.
And
it's been almost 2 years since we had a draft that looks quite a bit like this, that was presented to the Affordable Housing Committee and to the POC and to the TBZ together. And there was immediate consensus on the part of everybody, this is a great start. And we're still wrangling over this.
Yeah.
So my own personal opinion is that we want to get this adopted and now, or as soon as possible. So I would just offer one thought, and that is that I would suggest that we not unknowingly open the door for further delay through some specific thing that we propose that maybe needs to be substantially vetted.
Yeah,
I'll just throw that.
I didn't see a lot that was missing,
No, I don't.
you know, and or probably more to the point. Because this is, as you said, a general planning document, it points the direction and strategy,
Exactly.
policy.
Yeah.
It doesn't preclude us from doing anything along in these areas, so. You know, if you wanted to take a policy position on this, I would say maybe the position of the committee should be, we encourage the Planning and Zoning Commission to adopt this forthwith. Just leave it as simple as that, you know, we're in support. We support it. It includes, you know, major affordable housing plan recommendations in our plan, and we would recommend you adopt it.
You know, it's hard to resist nitpicking, but there are those on the commission who don't resist. They'll continue.
Well, we started nitpicking it
So,
too.
yeah, you just have to resist that, or unless it's
Yeah,
substantive,
it's an easy,
you know.
it's an easy thing to easy trap to fall into. But, and we have the opportunity to speak as individuals on October 15th.
Mhm.
And, so we should, I think that would be appreciated, so we can submit one, you know, proposal on behalf of the committee, something we all buy into, and then we can, speak as individuals. From my own perspective, I intend to speak it as an individual, and my main thrust will be act on it
Yeah.
as soon as possible. With adding some additional color in terms of what I think the need is and whatnot, but let's move ahead. It's my own thought. So I guess we can go on we could walk through Bob's document and see where that takes us. Where we could start with Mark's document and then maybe build Bob's observations into it.
I'd be interested in hearing what Bob has to say.
We just have to make copies.
Yeah, you want me to make copies of this? I mean, it's very.
Mark's document.
What you just looked at. It's yours. No, it's actually Mark's.
Oh.
It's Mark's.
This is a 3-page, this is, huh? I prefer to Bob, he's done a very,
It's thorough.
Just in terms of fact, so the 8 bullet points that we distributed the last
We talked
meeting.
about this last time, didn't we?
Yeah. So this was something Mark put together in response to what he thought the directions we were going or may want to go in a couple of months ago. And he handed it to me when we met between meetings. And I kept it and I brought it at the last meeting and I handed it out. I didn't have an electronic copy, but we talked about that again this week and thought it was good for us to share with the committee. And then Bob's been working on his version since then. And so we're
Yeah, this is a little anecdotal, but I was surprised when I read it that they never address the fact, they talked a lot about, you know, developments that have retail in the ground level, but there's no addressing that, you know, people under 40 don't shop retail. No addressing that sort of issue. And I think it's a big issue in terms of, that's why there aren't as many clothing stores and that's why, you know, restaurants, yes, but not, I don't know. I was surprised that didn't come up as a long range issue.
and maybe they intended to, you know, when they said there's more room, there'll be more room for residential, maybe implicit in that was the fact that we don't see the need for as much.
It's nice to have it, I get it, but you're really only getting restaurants now.
So Jackie, I drive up Main Street in Westport and that street is always filled with stores, always. You know, they might come and go, but it's always filled with
And
stores.
that's the important point. They come and go because they can't make it.
Yeah.
My kids, I know, they don't shop at stores, you know.
That's true.
Grocery stores, that's about it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was sort of interesting, but the long range sort of overview that they didn't mention that.
That's why Amazon has so much return.
Or so much business too.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, people to say, well, I'll buy it. If I don't like it, I take it back, and then it goes out someplace in the wild.
It's the Zappos
Little
money.
wonder.
But you look at, everything I read about millennials and the generation after them, they don't even buy clothes, they rent clothes. I mean, it's a barter kind of generation, and
Sorry, I didn't have
they
a
don't even own stuff.
chance to
Thank
steal
you.
anything.
Where can you rent these clothes?
Oh, they're online, oh, absolutely.
You need a sports jacket.
My daughter.
That should be easy to find. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, you have an option to buy them? Yeah. Yeah, like, 30 years old.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bob got paid by the page, so he puts my.
So what I did was I started with our plan. And I identified all of the, we have a lot of action items in prioritization order in the plan. So I just threw them on a piece of paper, as well as added some things that have come up in our conversations in our meetings this year. Some things that just aren't in the plan. So I've added them. And then I went to the P O C D, and wherever I could find a match, I put the page number down. So where you see like number 2, that's page 22. Well, that's directly referenced to page 22 of the P O C D draft. And so most of these are in the plan, which is great. Just about all of them on page 2. There's just a few, 3 or 4 that I didn't find in the plan. Maybe they're there, but they come up either in our conversations, like the last one on the first page, number 9, increasing the inclusionary zone fee from $5 to something else. Not in our plan. We've discussed it though, we've talked about it, and whether it's 6 or some other number, I don't think we landed on anything, but maybe that's an example of something that's so specific, doesn't have to be in the P O C D.
No.
For us to work on or propose later on. So I don't think any of these are big deals. There are some things about ADUs that maybe they could have included, but they do have reference to looking at ways of further liberalizing ADUs. It's not completely missing in the plan, in the P O C D, it's in there, just not to this level of specificity.
Yeah, I think the language is probably inclusive enough that you
Yeah.
could pretty much wrap anything in there in terms of expanding
Absolutely.
opportunities.
Yeah. None of it prevents us from, at some point, being more specific.
But
Number 10 is 4-family reduced from 12.5 to 10.5, 250, right?
Hmm?
Little chart on the second page.
yeah,
10,
10, 250.
Yeah, this was 0. Well, they don't have to be small people, there you go, 10,000.
yeah.
That's a typo. My proofreader was fire
This is one where I absolutely think we want to propose reducing the lot sizes, but maybe not get too specific.
Oh, exactly,
I think within the context, again, with, it talked about missing middle housing, I think this fits.
That one's there,
very-
that 12.5 to 10.25 is in there, page 18.
Because we've looked at this, we've got some data, and at the appropriate point, we should bring it up, but it doesn't have to be, it's too detailed to be in the P O C D.
I find this interesting. So you can have a house and then another house the same size?
Perhaps.
40%, 50% of the size of one.
Again, these are concepts.
These are concepts, these are ideas.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So,
I think that Commissioner
that
Randolph
one.
came up with that one in his submission.
Which number is that?
That's 3B. Yeah, he had some interesting insights that he provided. Not all of them found its way into this current draft.
Yeah.
He provided a lot of feedback. That got them thinking, so. So I think we should just encourage them to move on, and, I don't, do you think they'll get any, what kind of pushback would they get on the hearing? Would there be? I don't even know how well attended it'll be.
I don't know.
I don't know who would even show up for it, I don't know.
Hopefully you will.
Maybe. I'll definitely be able to remotely. Depends if there's a playoff game that night. Which there might be.
Well, they're not gonna be playing. So don't worry about it.
The Padres are still in it,
Oh, now you're a Padres fan?
Well, they're still in it.
Yeah, my thought is if you're gonna take a joint position and not be specific, it's more like, maybe you did a good job and get the plan, you know, and
Exactly.
note the fact that it does encompass many of the recommendations, if not all the salient
All the
ones
major
in the
ones.
affordable housing plan, so I don't see why we wouldn't support the adoption of the P O C D at this point,
Yeah.
because it pretty much mirrors our own language.
The only things that are missing, there are a few things that are missing, but I don't think there's anything that really would be preempted, right, so what are we missing when we
Are
talk
they
for?
big, like, are they big things? Because remember what you said before you started?
No, that's what I just want everybody,
Okay.
so we've
He's playing
talked,
devil's advocate.
we've talked a lot about, so, you know, all the great work Bob's done on the underparked
Yes,
areas.
yes.
So one of the things that we thought specifically was some of these, so for some of these big lots, and we had talked about a specific size, greater than a certain size, we would reduce the parking requirements further for those.
Is
But
that-
I don't think
It's
that's,
in there, it's in here.
it's in here, it's in Bob's, but it's not in the P O C D.
Okay.
Well, they don't have the max, but they do have recommendations.
From 5 to 4, from 5 to
And we're
4.
comfortable with that, but setting a cap, I think that's the only,
Yeah, it was just,
I don't think we.
I don't think there's anything that we have studied and think is a good idea that would be preempted by
Right.
the P O C D.
What is this used for then? What is it? What happens?
What happens with the P O C D? Well, it's a guidance document. It's really how what's the town's priorities in terms of development and conservation. So it's very, very useful. I mean, when people come and talk to, and sort of just recently as today, said, well, you know, we're considering purchasing a piece of property in downtown Fairfield. What can we do with it? You know, what's the potential for redevelopment? We read in the regulations that, you know, if you were doing residential, you have to do 50%. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If I'm doing a 3-story building, how do I split a half of a story?
Right.
So the conversation is, well, you should take a look at the draft P O C D because the draft P O C D is signaling that the Planning and Zoning Commission wants to revise those land use policies to encourage mixed use development. Provide, you know, right now we have a 5-story, 50-foot maximum in the center design district. They're proposing
I saw
4
that.
stories and 52 feet. So reducing the number of stories, but keeping the height, because people perceive height based on number of stories,
Right.
you count stories. So they want to keep it relatively modest, but still allow for some redevelopment. But they're gonna, if you're doing a mixed use, if you're doing a 3 or 4-story building, 50% doesn't make sense. So what's important is to keep the ground floor commercial use, and then above could be commercial or residential. So they don't have a specific cap, or percentage, so much so that ground floor has to be commercial. So they don't want ground floor residential like they have one case. So that's an example, but it really is helpful for staff when we meet with folks and they're like, well, I'm considering investing in your town. I'd like to do this. Is that consistent with what you wanted to see happen? We can go to the plan and say, yes, it's not my opinion. Now it's an adopted document. This is what the town
Can
would like to
TPZ
see.
change this zoning on their own or it has to go through RTM?
No, the Planning and Zoning Commission can change the zoning regulations on their own. Now, what they've done in the past is they've kind of gotten halfway, you know, they adopt a plan and they never get quite around to changing the regs to implement the plan. And with the expectation that maybe a private developer will do that work for them in some cases. So they'll make, we can point to the plan, say, we don't have an implementing regulation yet, but if you wanted to propose a text amendment consistent with the plan recommendations, I think the
Would
commission.
that be
will-
an exception just for that project, or would they implement it within the plan then?
So they would make the change and then they would show how that change would be implemented on a site plan. So the,
Sort of forced into it.
so they're kind of like me, like they like to see tangible, like what will happen
Reasons
if I
for doing
change
it,
these
yeah.
regulations? And then you have a plan of development that goes with it. So, but if you don't do that, the converse is, for those of you who listened to the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing last night where they finished up the Exide property, there was a lot of talk about, gee, this is really an extension of the downtown. We'd prefer something different than an auto dealership here. Well, the reality is we never did change the zone. It's designed industrial.
Right.
An auto dealership is a permitted use. So, the point was made to commission members and the public, well, we had our chance.
Yeah,
And part of the thing is, not spend 5 years debating this. Maybe if you really thought that was an important thing, we go ahead and do it. Because, now somebody's come in and said, oh, you permit an auto dealership, I'm gonna build an auto dealership there. We don't really want that. Well,
Across the street.
Mark, the POCD it's like a master plan, but it's not a
It's the master
regulation, it's not a law.
it's not a regulation.
And so developers would go to the zoning.
Regs.
Right.
Yes. And so then, if you don't change the regs consistent with your plan,
Right.
and people are like, well, it says here in the plan you want this, but your regs don't allow that. And it's like, well, we didn't get around to changing the regs yet, but if you change them for us, I think they'll consider it favorably. So,
It's kind of a moral guide, I think. But think of our plan, that 5-year plan that we developed, almost, or 2 years ago now. I mean, we feel beholden to execute that, to make it happen, right? It's a moral guide. So I think this is.
we don't have the power TPZ does though, so that's why
Sorry?
we don't have the power that TPZ does in terms of actually changing the regs.
no, we're not.
No, we don't, but I mean, we'll all feel accountable if we don't deliver on that plan.
Mhm.
And I guess that's the point I was making is, if in fact we aren't following the POCD, I think that members of the Planning and Zoning Commission are going to feel qualms about not fulfilling that guide, that moral
The other
guide.
thing I learned, though, was that having the PLCD enables staff, town staff, to apply for grants. And they can always go back, these are the goals we've laid out. And it just helps, makes their job a little easier when they're applying for state or federal grants. And I didn't know that. And
That's true
so
too.
that came up several times as a real plus for having an updated.
And if you don't have an updated POCD, now, we're not running afoul of that, but if you don't have one that's been updated every 10 years,
Right.
you're actually ineligible for state grants. State
So that's big. That's big.
It is big, it is important.
We lose sight of that sometimes. That's
But I think,
big.
you're empowering the staff then to be able to better represent what the community's wishes are.
Yeah.
Because without that, you're just kind of guessing. Well, I think they might like this.
Right.
Sometimes they don't really follow the plan, but at least you're on safe ground. Here's the plan. Do this.
No, my understanding is that the consultant has been working on regulations. So.
Well, I think what they're first working on is just a cleanup of the existing.
Yes.
Well, yeah, correct.
So, it's been 30 years since they did a comprehensive rewrite of our zoning regulations. So as people amend those, they kind of, it gets a little wonky. It's hard to read. There's some language that may be not completely consistent between sections. So the idea is to kind of go through that and clean it up. And then once you have a cleaned up version, then you can incorporate these more substantive policy changes that the commission is adopting.
Right, and so
But they have to go through a process then to do that.
So I think TPC members have a copy of this consultant developed cleanup. I think they've been given a copy and that they now have. And so, yes, the first step is for them to, I guess, agree what the baseline will be. And then they can undertake changes that come as a result of the completed POCD. So,
So could we as a committee have a position paper submitted to them, or do we just rely on individuals? Or both?
I would like to have a position statement.
We were going on record for some kind of written statement that we could submit.
Or would somebody want to make a motion to some effect? Or-
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, do you, so I guess the next question is to what depth do we want to go to in the statement? I mean, do we want to cite
I
specifics
think it's short and sweet.
or just say, great job? Great job, you nailed it. Make it happen now.
Maybe I'll,
We want it.
maybe I'll, if I'm writing something on your behalf, maybe I would just want you to, you nailed it. I'll come up with appropriate language.
Yeah.
Yes.
But is that the general sense that you'd like to at least signal that, hey, we're okay with it. We're in support of you adopting the plan.
Yeah.
It was exciting that it was first too. Affordable housing was the first section.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Really make it a little bit more
A
elegant.
community that's home to all, yeah. Now, do we want to, just a question for the group, do we want to say that our comments are focused on this section or these sections, or do we want to just remain silent and just say,
I think the plan is, as it relates to housing.
Yeah.
That's our bailiwick, right?
And then if you personally feel strongly about a certain part
Right.
and then you
Absolutely.
can say, I'm part of the Affordable Housing Committee
Yep.
and this is what I feel strongly about. I think like
Sure.
that should be a good plan.
Go, that's a good.
yeah, and I think probably say, for instance, Nina, if you're speaking, you can say, I'm a member of the Affordable Housing Committee and I'm speaking on my own.
On my own,
Okay.
yes,
Exactly.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
Excellent.
So we're going to send a letter saying that we support the.
I used to like do a motion that was passed, like
Yes.
the Affordable Housing Committee passed a motion, maybe unanimously, maybe not. That we
You're
support.
making a
we
motion?
support-
I'm fishing for one.
That POCD, we support the affordable housing section of the POCD.
Well, the housing related
Yeah.
Yeah. well,
Housing related.
Housing related section of the POCD.
sections, and we could probably say sections,
Sections.
because this, I think this subsequent one also
Yeah,
addresses.
the first two.
What's the motion?
Yeah, that's a motion, yeah. Moving along here.
Yeah.
Second.
There you go. Seconds. Okay.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay. Well, you gotta keep it generic, you're generic. What am I talking about?
Well, we wanted to move along, so
Exactly.
let's just get it going.
Yep.
Well, Bob, thanks for doing this. This will be a good reference document we continue to use as well as the board.
Very well done. Thank you.
Okay, so, let's see. Do we have anything?
Well, number one, I think you probably, I don't know if everyone's saw that, but Attorney Russo was gonna come tonight. He said they had something come up and he asked if we could hold this over till next month. But you do have a copy of the amended regulation that has been filed with P&Z. Staff, Tim Went, Emmeline Harrigan and myself all met with Chris to go over this proposed amendment. And I think generally we all understand the concept. I think this committee was generally supportive of the concept. I think it probably does need still a little bit of wordsmithing. Some of the things that we discussed was, and certainly Chris will be here to present it next month, but I think what we're trying to do is give the Planning and Zoning Commission some guide rails for things that they should consider to determine whether or not an offsite unit is comparable to the onsite unit. And so there should be language like including but not limited to, you know, these factors, like location. And perhaps a list of other factors, not to totally box them in, but to give them a little bit of guidance. So they're just not left to their own devices and gives it a little bit of structure so they can make that determination. I guess the question, one of the questions I had to this group is, there was certainly conversation between Attorney Russo and staff as to whether or not there was a role of the Affordable Housing Committee in this process, whether, you know, it would be upon the recommendation of the Affordable Housing Committee, the Planning and Zoning Commission, may adopt this, you know, type thing. In terms of, you know, would we want,
Do we have the authority to do that?
if you wrote it into the regulations, it would.
The Affordable Housing Committee has regulations, establishes and says, this is what you have to do, and this is what you may do.
Yeah, we don't have regulations, we have guidance.
We have
Planning and zoning.
a
Planning and zoning.
regulation that set up the Affordable Housing Committee.
Sure, that's an ordinance, yeah, yeah.
And the ordinance says you can do this, and if you want, you can maybe do that.
Yeah.
And so is what you're saying going to step beyond that?
Yeah, I'm not sure, well, again, I don't know that that's inconsistent with the ordinance that establishes this body. I don't know how the Planning and Zoning Commission would feel. In the past, they've sought out your advice and guidance on such issues. Just an interesting question, I hadn't thought of it before. So certainly that might be something for us to think about as to whether or not there is a role for this body and whether that would be desirable. You know, there's still the question of the timing of the conveyance and the restriction, you know, it's being proposed as, you know, I presume that they would present this to the Planning and Zoning Commission, hey, we're gonna make this trade, and the Planning and Zoning Commission would say, okay, that's okay with us. But they wouldn't actually be obligated to provide the actual unit until the CO is issued. So it's kind of that's how I'm viewing it, but we probably need to clarify that with Chris when he comes. And then there's some language here, I think, you know, Herb, you pointed out, when you look at IE is in other words instead of for example.
Right.
And, you know, I would even question, it says in said scenario, the town of Fairfield or this other entity would have the option for, I didn't even know that you need that language, that second section in there. In terms of what the town can already do, its own property, so, or this other entity could do. So I don't know if that language is even necessary, but, or, you know, why you would limit it to those particular examples. So there's some cleanup work to do. I'm just pointing it out so that you kind of can think about those things for next month. And, you know, that means that probably this won't go before the Planning and Zoning Commission for, you know, sometime thereafter, but.
Mark, what do we do if Westway is being built and they're going to sell the unit for $1,250,000?
Yeah,
And they're going to exchange two offsite units
yeah,
that probably are going to cost $300,000 or $400,000.
yeah.
That seems to be totally an unequal trade because the developer is getting another $800,000.
So maybe when, but what this says is, it sets a process, but it doesn't say they have to in that instance accept it. They could say it's not enough.
That's good. Yeah.
But I think what we probably want to do is think about, you know, what criteria the Planning and Zoning Commission should use to make that determination. And location is obviously one thing we talked about.
Yeah.
You know, it came up before, you know, if I'm building something in Southport and I'm gonna propose something over in Tungus Hill, is that really comparable? Well, maybe if it's offering, you know, 3 units for one, you really want those, yeah, I don't know, but it's among the factors that should be considered, but maybe it's not persuasive. You know, so I think it's a good point. This just establishes a mechanism by which they could do it. In some groups, say, don't give me the power because I don't feel like I can use it responsibly. I guess we won't know that until they use it irresponsibly, but,
So, do we write a language, or like, do we write a language of what would be comparable? Like, I think that would be very restricting, but also, like, it should something similar to that,
I think you should think of
right?
the criteria.
The criteria, you know what I mean, like,
size, similar or greater size. This doesn't say value,
Could be
Right?
value,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, amenities, I mean, it could,
estimated value,
could
or
be-
like, yeah.
That's a good point. I mean,
You don't have to-
value really is a key here, right?
I just want
There
to
should be
kind of
a-
prime the
The commission is the planning and zoning.
planning and zoning commission, right?
So, I mean, I have faith in that.
Yeah, I
No,
think,
what
I
Mike is
think,
saying is, do we add that it also has to go through us? basically?
Oh.
Right.
that's one option.
Yeah.
The other option, I think planning and zoning would actually appreciate is giving them some specific criteria to apply
Yeah,
that we think is appropriate.
I think if we can come up with those words.
And then we probably want to have language that says you'll consider the following, but not be
Yeah.
limited to that. So it's not,
Yes.
including but not limited to, so then they could think about other things that maybe we haven't thought about that they can
Yeah.
apply.
So just follow up when I thought, Nina and Janice. So let's use Westway as an example. So there's probably, let's say there's an $800,000 difference between what that market price of that unit would be and what the affordable occupant would pay. So that means that planning and zoning would have the flexibility to decide, do I want to put $800,000 in the housing trust fund? Do I want to build 2 units and, where there's a $400,000 difference in some section of town, get, 2 units for one, or some combination of those, but at least the value would be sort of the measurement stick in
Yeah,
terms
and-
of what they would
and
try to.
And in my head, it wouldn't necessarily be value that you can put a dollar amount in, right? So if we're building an affordable housing, like part of the value would be that it's close to the transportation, right? Part of the value is that it's close to different amenities that would make that property valuable to the person living in the affordable housing that would need that. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes like value to someone might be, I wanna live far away in the hill, whatever it was that you were saying, like far away from people that no one will be able to like get in touch with me, as opposed to someone who wants to
I
be
like that.
able to, yeah, I wanna live in the woods.
And what can the developer do? What's the developer capable of actually doing?
And what are the amenities that are also available to the people living in the affordable housing?
Sure.
There, near a park, childcare, I don't know. I'm just making things up at this moment, but it's just like, what would be valuable to someone living in an affordable housing?
Yeah, and certainly, one of the things that we talked about when Chris was here last time was, some advantages if it were actually conveyed to the town or the housing authority. In essence, that would be a transfer in perpetuity, so you'd have the benefit of the affordable unit for more than a 40-year restriction, which is,
Yeah.
should be
Right.
considered, right? That's a valuable concession. So, I mean, I think the other thing that maybe he was surprised when we talked about last time was,
Right.
it wouldn't have to necessarily be ownership to ownership. We could entertain a rental or several rental units in lieu of an ownership unit too, if that was really meeting a community need. So, I think he was pleasantly surprised by that flexibility, as well as the fact that we weren't really dead set on the location, because whatever location you propose,
There's like.
there's gotta be an example where it's like across the street, it's outside the planning boundary, is that really different? I mean, it's like, so.
So I guess if you're in the town, like getting a fee in lieu of.
I think he thinks this might be the easier pathway.
Right, but if the developer can't find or identify comparable units off-site, I'd like there to be an alternative that will take.
Well, I
Will take
yeah.
money.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that really, I think they had a different concept of the value and what we were thinking.
Yeah.
And, this may be, I don't know that it's necessarily a cheaper option for them, maybe it is. What the property I have in mind is not gonna be
Seems like
cheaper.
in
I would like to make it
many
either or.
cases, not necessarily all, but it seems like it would be.
Why couldn't we add that language in and make it an either or?
Well, I think that's when we hear from Chris and when we take a position, you may wanna consider whether or not you advocate for, that as an option, a fee in lieu, an appropriate fee in lieu option. So the Planning and Zoning Commission has the full array of tools at their disposal, and they can determine what's in the best interest of the town at that given time.
Yeah.
And I think I heard Steve once say something about like, what is that fee? Like, how do we determine that fee? And what are the parameters of
I
that
like
fee?
what you,
And
I
how do
like,
we?
I like what you proposed.
I
We
know,
proposed a pretty high, it's a pretty good number.
20% sounded really good to me.
It's a pretty good number, and it generated a lot of money,
But still,
the down-
it still
So
doesn't,
yeah.
it doesn't cover the
And
gap.
can we, yeah,
the downside to any fee in lieu is that you don't have a unit at the end of the day, you have to take
Yeah.
another step to actually buy the
We'll
unit.
buy
So
you. I mean.
Yeah. You could,
Well, cash will buy you. I mean,
When I looked at the way we've used the money with the Affordable Housing Committee, we've used it at Navy Housing, which
Yeah.
basically we all kind of owned already. And we use it at two outlying lots on Greenfield, right? That no other developer would try to do something with. And so if we get the money,
Right.
I don't know if we have any place to use it.
well, we'd have to probably, consider using it in a different fashion. We'd have to maybe entertain other uses. I do think purchase of land is a important component to assist in the development process for this type of housing, but the reality is, and it came up in the conversation we had with the Darien Affordable Housing Committee is, you're in competition with private developers that can, if they're gonna, at the end of the day, be able to sell something for $2 million, you're of course gonna be outbid for that property, unless you have some, secret strategy of some sort. Somebody has, wants to
Right.
do it below market because they think this is an important thing. So
I mean, that's one advantage of the nonprofit developer, right? The nonprofit developer partner.
yeah, so you could work through nonprofit development partners that then leverage your contribution to purchase property at, market rates. So you're spending $2 million to buy a piece of property of which the housing trust fund is maybe contributing, 30% or something like that. So that might be a way to do it. Or you're funding other things along the way. But, we can worry about that when we get to it, I guess. I just wanted to cue it up because he's not here, but he will be at the next month, and these are a couple of things that we should talk about.
Well, I mean, and you certainly could ask Jim Wendt if he wanted to get the thoughts of the commission in terms of the role that they would like.
I sure will, yeah. Maybe do.
Because I think it'd be good for us to know what that is,
Mhm.
because if they want us to opportunity by opportunity to weigh in and provide feedback, I think it's important for us to know so we can be prepared and not reacting at the last minute to a request.
Yep.
sorry, very important update. The Mets are now winning
Okay.
1.
Late in the game, what, in the seventh?
It's gotta be
6.
That was an important update.
Very, very important. You're welcome. Or 7. 7.
Not being the minutes.
Yeah, so
It will not be in the minutes.
But in the recording.
Straight there, so that's what you said?
Oh, they are?
Mark, the owner occupied affordable housing. Has anybody at the Navy housing site said that they're really happy that they bought down there? because they're not allowed to get much of an increase. They don't get the write-up of equity the way that most people do.
Yeah, because otherwise it wouldn't be affordable.
Right,
Yeah. So what do they get out of it versus,
right? Initial home ownership?
Yeah, there used to be the thing when you buy the house, the equity would be as you pay down your mortgage, that was your equity in the house.
Yeah.
And then, 20 years ago, it switched when it's like, oh, you saw this massive appreciation in home prices, and now everyone thinks it's a piggy bank. I'm just gonna get, when I buy it for $300,000, I'm gonna be able to sell it for $600,000, and I'm gonna get all that. That wasn't always the way it used to be, and you got some appreciation, but it didn't go up like that. And you just pay down your mortgage, and then you burn your mortgage, and you have the thing free and clear, right? If you stayed in your house for 30 years.
That was the case.
So it's a lot different these days. Now, the people that buy that, I reminded somebody today, you would not have had the opportunity to own that house at that price without this program.
Right.
So everyone, is glad when they buy the house. And then, 10 years later, when they go to sell the house, oh, I can only sell for this much? Well, it works both ways.
And they're thinking that this is a bond.
They're still getting,
It's not a technology stock.
they're still getting an appreciation in their investment, just not as much as the market has gone up, independent of that. But that's why they're buying a deed restricted unit. You benefit both ways. So it'd be great if you can always guarantee buy low and sell high and don't worry about it, but that's not how it's structured.
well, so I bring that because I'm wondering if we're spending too much time worrying about for sale affordable housing versus for rent.
I think, for sale is a very niche product that can only exist if the town or some other entity is in the equation, in the deal. I don't think it works very well
Right.
in the private marketplace where we have these inclusionary units, because independent of like this massive discrepancy between a market rate unit selling for 1.5 and an affordable unit selling for 200, at the end of 40 years, which is our current restriction, somebody has the golden ticket and is going to cash out and have this massive appreciation for what? It doesn't make any sense to me.
It's a really good point, though, because if one of our objectives at some point is to promote home ownership, then we have to have a strategy that really entails working with, with the Habitats or the Housing Trust Fund in order to make these things happen.
Honestly, Habitat is the same way. It's even more prescriptive in the sense that they're providing, and they're able, by doing so, providing deeply affordable home ownership opportunities that other people would never have a chance at all. But they're doing it by providing a 30-year fixed rate, zero interest mortgage, and basically saying, hey, if you get any trouble down the line, we'll buy it back from you. No issues there. So it's ownership in the sense you have a little bit of equity in the house, you have some upside potential, but at the end of the day, you're not fully on your own, untethered. But I think if you're going to do it, that's probably what you need to make it really affordable. Because no one's at these income, you can't afford a $600,000 house at these incomes. So we don't have too many houses at $350,000 anymore, right?
We have one under 400,000 today listed for sale, just one.
You can buy a condo, maybe. Yeah, so
So another question, Mark, if Westway, if we had gotten those two units that were affordable or should have been affordable, could we have
we're
sold them?
we're still disputing this.
Could we have sold them for the $1,250,000? Then we'd have $2.5 million and we can go out and do something else.
So the town would get them and then would extinguish the deed restriction and sell them
Yeah,
and take the money.
yeah.
Take the money and run.
I suppose we're in the, I suppose we're the declarant, so I suppose we could do that.
Yeah, but just a thought, you know?
But, the other thing is, could you have conjured up some scenario in which, for those 2 units, you could get the equivalent of that and have 4 units or 6 units someplace else in town, which is kind of what he proposed at one point. He had a 6-to-2 trade, which we said no to.
Wow, why?
Well, because not all of them were in Southport.
No, he said no to it.
No, TPZ said no to it.
I think we have a political.
Six
We've
families?
got a political issue here in
Yeah.
part, because I think the commission is reluctant to, let's say, let Southport or, Westway get out of providing affordable units, because we want these distributed throughout town.
Right.
And so there's a reluctance to do
Well, I think
that.
that's part of it. And I think part of it is that this particular developer, was a little bit
Was an issue.
tarnished as well, in the eyes of the commission, but it was offered. I think one of the units was in Southport and the others were in Tungus Hill, and it was gonna be, he was gonna buy all of them.
There was a 4-family,
Swap them out.
and
Yeah,
and 2 singles, yeah.
so we said no. But, maybe a different commission would have considered it differently. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, so any more on this, but we can expect.
We can expect, yes, Chris to come at the
Chris
next meeting.
month.
Yep.
Okay. Talk more about that. Okay, so do we want to talk about the ADU workshop?
Yeah, and I've got, everyone can take flyers. If you know of any places that haven't seen a flyer, you'd like to put it up, we have about 30 people registered. Which I think is pretty good. It's just the same, so I'm just passing around.
I'm passing.
Take one, pass around.
I'm taking the.
I can see Janice really.
If I ran out,
just really wanted one.
I'll make more. If you need more,
Maybe I could post it downstairs.
Yeah.
I don't know how that'll go,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of people coming in now.
Yeah. Churches, other community bulletin boards, grocery stores, wherever you think people congregate.
Yeah.
We have all the, the town buildings and stuff like that.
I'm sorry that I can't make it.
Yes, we have a distinguished panel
Yes.
led by our esteemed moderator. Bob, right?
But
This time, yes.
Okay.
And
Bob's back.
and we hope to see it in First Selectmen's newsletter tomorrow, and also the Bigelow News tomorrow, both which get pretty wide circulation.
Yeah, it went out through the press, and we did share it with, it's been in the newsletter once already. And we did cover it with the senior center, so, but
From 12, could we possibly get on there?
could we get on there?
Could they, don't they do community
They
announcements?
do occasionally, I think they are on a mailing list, so I don't know if they picked it up, but it will be recorded, so we'll be able to post it. We did ask people to fill out a survey, similar to last year, and we've gotten about 26 responses to date, most of whom live in town, own their own home. A good percentage say they know little to nothing at all about accessory dwelling units, so that's our audience. 62% say they're interested in creating an ADU, primarily to provide housing for a family member or to create flexibility so they can age in place. This most recent biggest concerns that they have are design or site considerations, followed by regulatory barriers and a lack of knowledge. And then
They don't know,
Cost.
they don't know about the cost.
cost is up there with lack of knowledge. About 40% say they would, are likely or very likely to create an ADU in the next 5 years.
Really?
So, it's a pretty good response. Hopefully, if you, with your help, we'll get good turnout. That's pretty much it for the workshop. Thank you all for.
So I'm gonna stay with the resource fair recap. That should be pretty quick.
Yeah, you guys were there. Jackie was there. Thank you.
Briefly, you had plenty of people, so it was a good turnout, I thought.
It was a good turnout. It was, the various vendors that were invited and accepted, that were spread around the gym. And Mark and Jackie were at the affordable housing.
Sonia Hine, right?
Sonia was also at the affordable housing economic development.
Table.
We had
to steal.
Stole a table.
Next time, bring candy. I found that out.
Yes, note to self.
People were very hot for the repair assistance brochure. That was,
Yeah.
That's
All the
always a
requests for
popular
that.
program. And there are other, I mean, I guess the Agency on Aging, I guess used to be called SWACA, or maybe still called SWACA, was there. Fairfield Senior Advocates, Age Friendly Fairfield, which was sort of the overall sponsor, had a table. And then there were various vendors. There was a Contemporary Tiny Homes was there, and we wandered over to talk to them and got their information. They're trying to build.
Haven't yet built any.
No.
They're trying to build 400 to 600 square foot units.
At a cost of
300, I think, per.
300 per unit.
Yeah.
300 a square foot?
Per square.
Yeah.
Square foot.
anywhere in this
Anyway,
area that allow.
Anywhere that allows them.
They don't have anything yet.
No,
Okay.
they're a new
No,
company.
they're breaking it.
This is a sales guy who was, who I think was sort of like flying blind a little bit, because he had been in Wallingford, I think, the night before, and he just learned when he was there that they didn't allow detached.
Oh my gosh.
Sharks.
That's funny.
Oh, well. Yeah. Do your homework.
So Mark, when you do an ADU that's detached, do you have to connect to the existing sewer, or do you have to do a new sewer line?
I would have guessed I don't know, probably need a new lateral, I would think. As a detached structure
Not a new line to this town.
I think you connect to the.
to your existing.
That's what I would think.
I would think.
I would
I don't know, maybe
think
you're
with
right.
water and electricity as well.
Otherwise, you'd be looking at prohibitive cost, wouldn't you?
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, my gosh.
we should know that for next week, I would think.
Yes.
Yeah, don't ask me that question. but ask one of the parents that question.
Well, that's Emily, she probably.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, well, she knows.
I'll get her ahead of that.
Is she going to bring information on?
I'm gonna write that down to
the
make
ADUs
sure
that
yes.
If not, I'm gonna ask. Well, it's about 225, I think,
What's that?
the number of ADUs.
Yeah, she's got that, but I meant in terms of how many they're actually, like last year, she said, that we were approving these at a rate of one.
One per month.
I you should know that,
That's
and
all right.
I'll answer. It's about once a month.
That's all right.
I don't know if it's ticked up, but. Yeah.
But, units get pushed back into the main unit, so we had more than 225 a few years ago. So they don't stay in perpetuity, if they're no longer of use, then they get absorbed back into the main structure. So,
there are a lot of other potential ADUs, just because you look at the accessory apartments that are, you know, that are in the assessors database. And what we don't know is how they classify something as a accessory apartment. They could be calling something an accessory apartment.
I'm not even going there.
Yeah, it's
You're talking about like pool houses or something, like a pool house?
Yeah, no, but I mean, so we don't really know that. In fact, what they call an accessory apartment may be
Right.
maybe a bedroom that you throw
Yeah.
a microwave in or something.
Suite with a hot plate.
The 225 are legal ones that are on record.
That's what
There
we
you
know
go.
for sure.
That's, yeah, and we'll leave it at that. Next. This is.
We all know of the legals that are in town.
Sewer questions? Jeez.
So, let's see, so we could go to the old standbys, Mark, if you want to do that next.
Yeah, I'll run through them very quickly. So the Housing Trust Fund, let's start with that. For about, we have an uncommitted balance of $949,451.
949?
$949,451.
Uncommitted.
Last month we had,
$893,576.
yeah, so that's a nice.
That's nice, that's nice.
Yeah.
And part of it is, many of you may have seen the newspaper, we did settle a case, we brought a lawsuit against housing property owner that wasn't abiding by the rental restrictions. And we collected $77,000, of which most of it was rent overpayment, which we've since returned to the three grateful tenants.
How long did that take?
Well, actually, once we started the action with this attorney, it took us less than, I'd say, less than a year.
What was he doing? Not maintaining the buildings or?
No, so what happened was, it's a very interesting story. It's a 4-family rental unit here in town. I didn't even know it existed. And the Housing Development Fund in Stamford had provided assistance in exchange for a deed restriction. And a few years back, about 2-3 years ago, I got a call from Joan Carty, ran the HDF, and said, hey, would you be interested in taking on the enforcement authority for this 4-family unit in Fairfield? This is the only property we own or we have an interest in Fairfield. I said, what 4-family unit? So she gave me the information. I said, well, it's not even on our inventory. So, you know, number one, I don't know about this, so this is good. But of course, yeah, we'll step in for the HDF. So we made that all happen. And at that time, there was the property had sold to a person. It was part of a portfolio that includes some properties in Bridgeport. The Bridgeport entity bought the entire portfolio. And so the first thing I did was reach out to the property owner and say, well, show us your rent roll and show us that you're abiding by these terms. And didn't get a response. So we have a change in administration, new town attorney came in. I was like, you know, I've sent this letter. He's basically ignoring us. Can we up the pressure here? So he sent a demand letter, and I included the language in the deed restriction is great. They asked for all this stuff, like their tax returns, everything. I just asked for everything that we were entitled to, and the town attorney made the request on my behalf. And they sent back some half-assed thing, like this is how much the rent's paid. But even from that, it was clear that they weren't abiding by the terms. So we said, well, this is not compliant. You know, first of all, it's not, you didn't provide us with the request information. We're still looking for that. And then secondly, what you're showing us indicates you're charging too much in the way of rent. So again, there were a little bit of stonewalling, but eventually it was clear that we just needed to get this out of this. They were like, we don't want to deal with you anymore. We're going to sell this. And so that we brokered a sale with a new party, but in the meantime, we brought an action against them, sued them. And this is how much you owe us. And the deed restriction also had language that says, in addition to any actual damages, there's liquidated damages, including 150% penalty on any amount. So we calculated what the rent, the overpayment was, and then we added 150% on top of that. And then the town attorney's fees, the collection. So that was the 77,000.
Mhm.
Then we went to the Board of Selectmen and said, this is how we propose to distribute the funds. Most of it went to the 3 tenants who were affected. And they got all a nice rent check, rebate check. And then a couple thousand went to the town attorney to cover his relatively modest fees. And we collected $23,000 in penalties, which went into the housing trust fund. So I'm happy that they actually covered in the paper because, you know, it tells people, hey, we are enforcing these things. And it tells landlords, hey,
Yeah.
you gotta do this. If you agree to it, you gotta do it. And we work with people. If people make an honest mistake and they say, well, I calculated this person's income, I thought they were income eligible, it turns out they're not, we're not gonna like throw the book at them. They made an honest mistake. People make mistakes all the time. I had somebody, I think I rented this and this person is not income eligible. You're right, the person's not income eligible. But I don't want you to throw the person out. You give them a year and you owe us another affordable unit. So next unit comes available, that's the affordable unit. You can charge them this rent and then they go to market at some point. But we try to work things, and I think you should know that the vast majority of property managers here in town try to do the right thing. They're trying to work with us. Everyone makes a few mistakes here and there, but by and large, you know, the people that manage Alto and Anchorage and Trademark and Fairchild Apartments, they do a good job. You have a couple people that are kind of like, you know, they try to do it themselves. They don't really know what they're doing.
It's hard work.
It's hard work.
A lot of work.
It's a lot
I
of work.
worked at Inspirica and trying to figure out the rents and
Oh, it's
all that
terrible.
stuff. It's,
Because it's all based on at the time, at the
Yes,
point in time. You have to
yes.
calculate what the rent was at that time.
Yeah.
And that's what is applied. So I think they do a pretty decent job. There's always a few people that are,
and finding
you know,
a good property
problems,
manager is
but-
difficult too.
I think this was helpful.
Did you ask Joan if she had any other mortgages in town?
I did. She's now, she's retired. So I think, you know, we have put HDF in touch with a few people to help finance affordable housing. And they're looking for financing opportunities, but we're aware of those. So there's no other mystery things out there.
Well, congratulations on that, Mark. That was a really quite good.
The other thing, you know, we are this close to filing the moratorium application. We did take a tour, Tom took a tour of 5545 Park Avenue. They're very close to getting their CO probably this month.
The other one on by 24, did they get the CO
Which one?
by
528 Black Rock Turnpike? Yes,
it looks like they already have people in
Yeah.
there.
they sure do.
Yeah.
Doesn't take long to lease up in this market, really is, especially for the affordable units. There's usually a waiting list right away. So we're waiting on that. Everything's kind of queued up and waiting for that CO ready to go.
So
The
if
thing,
that comes tomorrow, the moratorium can be filed.
so what happens is there's a notice that has to go into the Law Journal and to the newspaper, which is kind of like, hey, we're filing a moratorium. It's the last call.
Yeah.
Give me your crappy
Yeah.
projects. So already we're seeing this little bubbling thing that's going on. But as I reminded people, it's like, what's the alternative? Just, you have to do it at some point. So it's gonna happen. So we have a couple, you're gonna see a flurry of these applications coming in, I'm sure. So just be on the
So
lookout.
what are the ones that we know of? So we know of 220.
So we know of the ones that are on the docket right now are 222 Stilson Road. Which is,
These are all 830
this
Gs.
is an 830G. It is scheduled for a public hearing on the 22nd of October. It's a relatively modest 830G. It's
It's actually a good place for it.
it's not a bad place. It's
Yeah.
between a commercial and a condominium development residential zone on a busy thoroughfare generally,
And it's
so.
all, that Oaks is all centered in.
And it's 24 units, it's 3 stories, it's like, 3 over 1 or 2 over
Must be
1.
really deep, that part.
They have to avoid, it's
Yeah,
It's on a
that's
podium,
half of
so
it
you're-
is pond.
the back half has a pond, so the parking is all underneath, so
Oh.
it's, up above. Then you have a couple of inclusionary projects, one of which is Mark Andre's project at 2179, 2199 Post Road, which he's said, I may have to file this as an 830G just to protect myself, because he's still getting some pushback from folks that are concerned about that project.
That's the one next to the cigar stuff.
Yes.
Mhm.
Next to
And
the
then
left.
we have,
Cigar shop?
then we have a
Oh, right.
small inclusionary development at 430, 452, small in the sense it's 18 units, it's 18 townhomes. They're proposing it, but it's at the upper end of Stilson
Mhm.
on the other side as you're heading north.
Right.
So it's an area right
Dolan's Corner.
kind of when things
Yeah.
get a little congested on Black Rock on Stilson, heading into Black Rock Turnpike. And so I imagine there's gonna be some concern about
Just before the
traffic
corner.
impact.
Village pub, just
Yeah,
before
the little
Village Pub.
pub,
Yeah, right below the Blue Pub,
Little-
yeah.
Right.
And how many, that's the 18
It's a
units?
very, if you know those lots, they're really deep.
Yes, they are, I
They go
know.
way behind the
Yep.
commercial property.
Yep.
So he's proposing something that's linear, it's kind of very
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah.
And it goes in, it was like a bunch of
Pretty attractive.
townhomes.
They're pretty attractive.
Yeah, they're not bad looking, but the location, that's
Right.
what the concern.
They haven't come before.
So the ones that we're looking at from an 830G perspective, there are several that went through Water Pollution Control Authority. One on Tuxas Hill, which is I think they were asking for hookup to 69 units. So that's a pretty big project on Tuxas Hill. And there was another one on Reef Road. 80, potentially up to 80 units on Reef Road.
That's a lot of people.
Where are they? 812, 820 Reef Road, 155 Forest Avenue. Water Pollution Control approved it on 6/19/24.
Oh.
So what's the cross street there?
It's very close to this 4-family property I talked about.
Oh,
It's 155.
So it's near Veterans Park. It's
Yeah,
near
it's near
Veterans-
Veterans Park. Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a 4-family at 155 Reef Road?
No, there's a 4-family at 159 Forest Avenue, Forest Road, which is the one that was the subject of this action, so. You go down there's a bunch of these 4-families there, you wouldn't have known, so there are a few that are kicking around that we expect to maybe see filed within the next 60 days or so. We're vulnerable until the state approves it.
How long, you said about
I think
6
they
months?
have 90 days or something like that to review and approve.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not a long time.
All right,
So, and, everything's pretty much ready to go.
Yeah. One of the Stilsons is ready to go to public hearing. I think it might be 4:30, 4:52.
Yeah, that is, so the hearing,
last night.
right, so the hearing date is, they didn't set a hearing date, they just referred it.
Yeah.
So the two so it's Royal Ave, the text amendment for the missing middle, the extra bonus lot that we talked about.
Mhm.
That's on for a public hearing on the 22nd of October. And 222 Stilson, the set aside development is on that same evening,
Oh,
the 22nd. 2179 Post, Mark Andre's project would follow. If they can complete that on the 22nd, it might be heard on the 12th of November.
Okay.
And then Stilson, the 452 Stilson is after
After
that.
that.
Yeah. So it really depends on how long these public
Right.
hearings take.
Yeah.
If they take, 3 nights of public hearings, Jim's already polling the members to supplement their regular meeting schedules. So they're gonna pretty much be meeting in continuous session, it sounds like, through the end of the year. There's nothing, Parkview, we hope to be on the Board of Selectmen's agenda for ground lease to Habitat on the 23rd of this month. Pushing hard to get that done. So Greenfield is still moving ahead with construction. Their plan is hopefully they'll be selling those to the first group of homeowners, right after the first year, kind of like, towards the first or second quarter of early 2025 for occupancy.
Mhm.
And then the plan is then to pivot to Parkview next year. No information on St. Emery's at the moment. The density bonus text amendment, as I said, I think we had John present this, Attorney Fallon present this in May. In June, we discussed it. I think we supported the concept. We wanted a longer term. And I had proposed for as long as the development exists, but not no less than 40 years. That's not in their current proposal. We didn't send a letter. I'd like to, reiterate the committee's position.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Mhm.
And that'll be on the 22nd.
Good.
And I think we covered everything else, right?
Yeah, the technical assistance, which won't take.
That we have next meeting is scheduled for the 14th of November at Fairfield U. And apparently we're gonna be talking about the housing trust funds, and I'm on one of the panels, so it won't be as educational for you guys.
Do you have anything to add on 980 High Street?
They didn't take any action. It is on tonight's agenda. My read of this, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I could see didn't seem like there was much basis for an appeal. You have to have like a major issue of law in dispute. And, this is kind of like how to weigh the evidence type thing. That wouldn't stop the commission from making an appeal. It becomes a question of whether or not the appellate court accepts an appeal on certain. If they feel there's not a weighty enough issue, they don't have to take it.
If they appeal, who does the legal work?
If they appeal, the town attorney would have to do it. Well, I believe the town attorney appointed counsel, so I believe it's Attorney Jim Baldwin is representing the Wetlands Commission. He was the one that went to the meeting and talked to him in an executive session.
I was surprised some of the units were market rate. What was the thinking behind that? Do you
I think
know?
what she's trying to do is I shouldn't say most, but the projects that she's done, both here and elsewhere, have all been low income housing tax credit finance deals.
Right.
So, with those, you're raising equity through the tax program. And you typically need to have a certain amount of income to cover your development costs. So maybe her the equity that she's able to raise through the low income housing tax credit, not enough to cover the development costs. Then she needs to have additional income to support it, which means that she might need some market rate units in there. But and the general thinking is also it's helpful to have mixed income communities, not
Right.
not everyone being low income, you know, so that it has less, you know, not stigmatized as those where the poor people live.
And this might effectively be workforce type housing.
Probably it will be. I don't think, you know, when she says market rate, it's probably like maybe she's doing it for 120% of AMI, which is workforce. But I know the plan, I know what she'd like to do. She'd like to apply for 9% tax credits. This, you know, they have a window, an application window. Those are the competitive credits. There's only a certain amount that's allocated to each state. If, you know, she's not able to apply or she doesn't get selected, then she could always fall back on the 4% credits. But, you know, 9% obviously are more valuable, so you raise more money that way. So,
I think the window is February, I think.
yeah. So anyway, that's where we are. I guess we'll wait and see what Inland Wetlands wants to do. And then the last thing was 254 Greenfield Street. This is the property. You can see it's a weird looking property, huh?
Yeah.
It's only valuable to the town.
By the way, then that's one.
Oh, wow.
That is an interesting lot.
Square it off though.
Yeah, so what makes this valuable is the town owns,
GIS,
so,
right?
yes.
But just like we did.
So I'd already gone to the planning, to the Parks and Rec and asked to basically take the property, a straight line across.
Yeah.
And they said yes.
Nice.
That's nice.
So we reached out to the property and worked out a deal. Purchases property based on the appraised value.
Yep.
And what makes it even better from your perspective is that the powers that be would like to use ARPA dollars to fund the purchase.
Yeah.
So
I second
we're gonna have
that.
to use
That's awesome.
use housing trust fund dollars for it, because the RTM, at least certain members of the RTM, really want to use some of their money for housing. For housing.
Good use.
That's cool.
That's a good idea.
And so Mark, this conceivably could be a four unit.
So we laid it out based on the frontage, and it works under existing zoning, roughly for a 2-family and a 1-family.
Is this gonna be a habitat?
Yes.
Awesome.
Well, I think what we'd like to do is suggest maybe if we can do less than a 9,000 square foot lot or less than the frontage required currently under a Residence B zone, maybe we can do 2 duplexes there without too much trouble.
What, does it square off with 244 or no?
Yeah.
No, it does.
Oh, all the way
All the way
up there.
up.
All the way
Oh,
up,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
just like
Nice.
244.
Okay.
So we've got a nice
All right.
Good lot.
That's cool.
That's terrific.
So you have kind of a,
I can volunteer at
Yeah.
Habitat for
Trapezoid?
Humanity. I already
Sort
did
of,
a
yeah.
whole week.
it's like a trapezoid.
Yeah, we're gonna
I'm a
have.
pro now.
We're gonna have you sign it.
Is this
Yeah, that's great.
Melville behind? Is this,
It's Berkeley.
no, behind, is this the park?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Oh,
It is Mark.
it says Melville. Yep,
Yeah,
okay.
Melville is on the other side,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And this,
That's great.
the park is that way.
Right,
Like, this is all
This
woods
is, yeah,
and no, and we're not using
there's
it
no
for,
use for it.
yeah, it's just open space.
awesome.
That's outstanding.
So,
Very nice, Mark.
So the owner has a place to go. I mean, he's currently living there, right?
no, this is an investor owned property.
Oh, okay.
So he has a tenant,
No, as a tenant.
and we're in the process of assisting him in relocating the tenant.
Awesome.
That's nice.
And, you know, we're very happy to, you know, work with him in terms of timing. He would like to do a 1031 exchange.
Mhm.
So we buy another investment property, so we don't have to, you know, pay a massive amount of capital gains or whatever. So that works perfectly for us. We don't, we'll take it when he's ready to close. And, so I assume you guys are all in favor of this.
What's the price?
340.
So we can take this off our.
I'll even
Blinded
volunteer
list.
at the.
You take it off the blade of this.
You don't need approval for this, do you?
Well, if you wanted to make a motion to recommend the approval, I'll take it,
Well, it's-
because I'll certainly tell the Board of Selectmen that has the full support of the affordable housing.
Move second.
Moved and second?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Absolutely.
Great.
I thought I made the purchase price good for you guys.
That was an excellent purchase price.
Can we
Why did they ask me for money this time?
Can we join this?
Yeah.
Can we keep you? Well, I think part of the motivation for the ARPA dollars is that they had allocated funds and some things either didn't get done or got done cheaper than what they thought, so they had money left to spend, they had to spend it by the end of the year, and I said, I got a project.
What is ARPA? What does that stand for?
ARPA.
The, what was it called? The American Rescue Plan Act?
Yeah.
So remember all the dollars that went out to local and state agencies and.
That's great.
So some places actually did use it for housing renovations. I think some people in the RTM regretted that they didn't have housing in their portfolios. So it's like, no, we'll fix that for you.
And we did get the information from Matthew Howard.
Yeah,
Oh, you
it was
did?
emailed to you?
No, I had not gotten anything from him, so.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to take a closer look at that.
So we can distribute that. We can distribute that to-
Like, I own it, but I have to pay this money, and what am I paying the money for?
Very confusing.
Seems like there's a lot to learn.
Where are these going?
Which one are you talking about?
What he was talking about.
Second.
Couldn't wait to do that
I think he knew all this.
Yeah, I have a
Sounded
motion
like
to
to me.
adjourn.
Is there a second? Are you recommending a second game?
No, like he hadn't thought through how it would apply to Fairfield. We were just talking in generalities and.
Wait, what's the score?
2-0. And Judge, no,
Yankees
Yankees
already
won.
Oh, that game's over?
Yes,
Missed
it's
one,
over.
4-1.
And how did Judge do?
Awesome.
And nothing.
Judge has still not,
Oh, yeah,
like,
now that he's
doesn't-
still-
not
he's
a
still
hit,
not
he's
showing
still
up.
struck out.
Yeah.
So I was saying he needs like,
Well, he's saving it.
Is that what he's doing?
You don't need them, you don't need them this round.
That's right.
Is that what?
The housing authority meeting.
I don't know, I think,
He's not Mr.
I think
Rock.
that needs a bunch of work.
Let's go to Carol.
Fundraisers.
What housing authority? Oh, that over. Carol Martin.
I think we're adjourned.
I think so.
Oh, sorry, I gotta.